Hello everyone, this is Chrism and I'd like to welcome you to this conversation about your Kundalini awakening experiences. Today, the first thing I'd like to do is to give a shout out, without actually shouting, but a shout out of gratitude to Joeri Kirchhoff in his blessed attempts at archiving the Yahoo group, because Yahoo groups will be going away soon. And so thank you, Joeri, for your attempts, and I'd like to thank other people who might be doing this as well. I haven't heard yet, but I'm also going to try to archive as much of that group as possible, and we'll go ahead and move on from there. One of the things that you want to understand is the level of primary emotional blockage detoxification. This is going to come hot and heavy for some of you, and it won't be pleasant. You'll think something's off. You'll think something's wrong, and it's not. In many cases, as I may have mentioned before, I'll mention it again. In many ways, we have to some degree, re-experience the emotions that are causing the blockage. Some of those emotions can be really, really difficult. Seriously difficult. And I want you to be prepared to cry and cry and cry for a long period of time. Be prepared. It doesn't mean it's going to be a long period of time, but it can be. And so prepare yourself to have that kind of an experience. Prepare yourself to relive some of it on an emotional body level, not as much as, as if it was happening right now, but sometimes it can feel like it. So you need to understand that. And for those of you that have gone through really difficult times, really difficult times that were absolutely implicated and designed by your Kundalini for you to experience, it doesn't make it easier. And you've got to insert forgiveness into the equation. You've got to insert forgiveness into the equation. You can't stay mad for years and years and years and expect a blockage not to occur because of your anger towards an individual or a circumstance that occurred for you that your ego does not like or agree with, and it caused you much pain. You can't sit there in your nice home, in your living room, on your couch with your dog, and stew away and expect your anger to recede. It's not. You're just building it. You've got to find a way to forgive yourself. You've got to find a way to forgive other people. And you've got to be able to see the necessity that grace had for you to experience what you experienced. Let's just say you were in the military. And let's just say that, well, okay, I'm in the military, and I'm being taught to defend my country, to defend myself, to defend my fellow soldiers, blah blah blah, whatever it may be. And you're taken over to a foreign soil, and you're given the command, okay, you got to kill these people over here. That's not as easy as it seems. You don't just kill people and not have emotional ramification from it. There's certain emotional changes that must occur. And all of a sudden you just realize, man, I'm in the wrong place. I should not be here. And yet your grace is the one that compelled you to join the military. The grace compelled you to join that service and to to be, in some foreign country, being commanded to kill people. So who are you going to blame? You've got to remember that the reality of life and the reality of existence is not the same as what our ego uh, uh, based society actually sees things as being. You know, the way you're raised and the way your life has progressed to the point where you find yourself in a situation that is not socially acceptable. I mean, you just find yourself like, whoa, what am I doing here? Okay. Uh, this merely is pointing to the fact that there are very specific equations within yourself that need to be faced and that need to be corrected. And you're not going to correct those situations by going into permanent levels of anger. This is, most people in this world have entities attached to them in one way or another. The devil on your shoulder and the angel on your other shoulder. Those are more those are more factual than people like to admit. And sometimes people don't even have an angel there, but they do. They do. There's always an angel present. By angel, I mean a positive guidance. These are difficult areas. And you stewing away in your nice house, sitting in your living room, looking at the beautiful scene outside, and being angry is not going to help your situation. You're going to have to dive deep and long into forgiveness on a consistent level, over and over and over and over. You're going to have to accept the levels of karma that you have made by virtue of being placed in that position, even though you didn't really have as much of a choice as you might think. And for many of you, you didn't have a choice. But you're still racking up karma by being there. And sometimes karma is not always, a debt against you. Sometimes you experience karma because you're balancing that debt. Okay? So as you sit there in your beautiful surroundings, you've got to go into forgiveness for what has occurred, for yourself, for other people. If you're mad at your grace, if you're mad at God, you've got to find forgiveness for grace and for God. You've got to do these things. If you have the Kundalini and you're in strong levels of resentment because of a karmic balancing that has been enforced upon you, you need to start visiting levels of forgiveness all the time. And it's not easy. There are some days when you're just going to spend the entire day in resentment and in anger and anguish and sadness. The whole palette of negative, hurtful emotions are going to come to you. You'll want revenge. You'll cry about your situation. It'll, this is the worst. Why me? Why do I have to go through this? It's not easy, ladies and gentlemen. And don't ever think it will be. You got to remember that your grace knows you better than you know yourself. And because of that knowledge, grace knows how to delve into your most private, personal areas of blockage and pull up and create scenarios that will help to begin to undo those blockages, like Granthi knots. Those take a while to overcome. And you can feel yourself chiseling away at them. But they can be so complex and they can be so intertwined with levels of karma and levels of low self-esteem, levels of egotistics, that it can be a very, very difficult knot to untangle unless, you are in special circumstances where that can be worked on daily, as much as you can. Some of you have resentments against family. You were raised in a torturous way. I mean, your parents were cruel. Some of you have been abused, sexually abused, or physically abused, or mentally and emotionally. All of the abuse that people give to children unfairly. Some of you experienced that. And and you don't want to float back to the idea, oh, then I must have been a child abuser, in a previous life or anything like that. Sometimes we just need difficult karma to balance out completely different kinds of karma. Okay? And remember, much of the time in this life, it is about balancing the karma that Kundalini has enforced you to surrender to. Okay. It's not an easy task. And I'm not going to pretend to try to sugarcoat it for you. Typically, you'll chip away at this because you'll be compelled by your Kundalini to chip away at these strong emotional blockages. And as you chip away at them, you'll gain clarity. You'll gain clarity just by chipping away at them from your day-to-day activities. But you don't want to go into anger all the time about it. You don't want to keep revisiting the anger. Try as best you can to revisit your gratitude to grace or your forgiveness for self and others. Try to realize that what occurred had to occur the way it had to occur. And I know it's, hearing this from me is probably not, the immediate balm of healing that a person would want. But it's true nonetheless. In the last video I said, no pain, no gain. And this is part of that equation. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm perfect at all these things. I'm certainly not. She gives me challenges every day. She gives me challenges. And I just want you to understand that everything is known. Everything is watched. Everything is observed. Every reaction that you have, every point of correction that you try to embrace, this is seen, and this is watched, and this is understood, that you're trying. And I just want you to try. Okay? And it's not just from abusive parents. It could be from a love life or a romantic situation that has gone wrong. People can be compelled to involve themselves in romantic situations that can be extremely harsh, extremely difficult within a Kundalini context. It can be really, really, really heart-rending to be inside of one of these relationships, and they don't just end when the relationship ends. The damage continues on. And these are areas that you need to forgive. Areas within another person, areas within yourself. Your self-esteem needs to be healed. It's like you weren't put in this situation because of your stupidity or your gullibility or your lack of choice. Well, maybe a little bit of lack of choice because it was Kundalini that did it. You weren't put into the arms of pain within a relationship because, you desired it. You were put there because it needed to happen, because there are very specific and strong levels of teaching. Mr. Crow agrees. There were strong levels of teaching that you needed to have. And those teachings don't always make themselves known until you've gone through the process of finding balance within the situation that occurred and the people involved in the situation and the scenarios that were experienced within that situation, within that romance. And it can take a while. I'm not saying, this is, speedy recovery time. I am saying that you need to consciously recover. You need to choose to get through it. And it's not one big choice, all at once. The heart is a very, very, very complicated chakra. The heart chakra is very complex. The heart has its own mind. It has its own neurons. It's literally a heart and brain setup. And they've even proven that scientifically. There are brain cells all over the heart. The heart has its own thinking and its own way of logic. And, when you damage the heart, even when it's, required by the Kundalini that you damage the heart, it doesn't just heal overnight. It takes a while. If you've loved honestly and truthfully, and you've given yourself into that relationship honestly and truthfully, and then hurt has occurred while you're giving honestly and truthfully, that's damaging. That's an injury. And the injury needs to be taken care of. The injury needs to be healed. And really one of the best forms of healing is to take the focus off of that injury. You don't just re-injure it with your anger over and over and over. That's not what you want to do. You want to, in a way, detach from that emotional response, that trigger response, and you want to begin to forgive people that were involved, including yourself. Nobody comes out of relationships that are broken up undamaged. The one who loves the least, controls the relationship. But even that, people are creating karma. People are creating a scenario so that they can experience levels of pain that will help them to grow away from ever experiencing that type of a relationship again. The mistakes within the relationship don't need to be repeated. They may be felt as the blockage comes up and is being dissolved, but they don't need to constantly reoccur. And if you keep injecting anger into a situation, then you're going to constantly nourish the reoccurrence and the feelings of that relationship. Now, she wants me to tell you right now that maybe that's part of your healing. Maybe you need to keep injecting anger into the situation so that you can really get the healing down permanently by re-experiencing it for years on end, years and years and years and years. Maybe you've gone out and got married thinking that, wow, gosh, I need to just find a good person and just hook up with them and, whew, there you go, all my problems will be solved. Well, they won't be solved. Because it's not an outside to in process. It's not somebody else that's going to be a bandage for your inner injuries. It's you that must heal your inner injuries. You must do that. It's an inside job, not an outside to inside job. You need to understand that. And you can count that, if somebody went, did you damage and they created karma for themselves, not for you. If you can actually see that, wow, that person really misbehaved, well then they created karma for themselves. And you need to trust that the grace that the Kundalini will find ways for that person to balance that karma. You don't need to take revenge yourself. Okay? It's very important that people understand this because you can spend a lot of unnecessary time stewing over a relationship gone bad. stewing over, and I don't mean just a romantic relationship, although I include that, but I also mean, joining the military or whatever kind of a choice a person makes that involves a relationship that is no longer seen as helpful or healthy. You know, you can look at that relationship and begin the forgiveness process. Begin it. Nourish it at every opportunity. It's like that picture I posted the other day about that tiny little seedling. I think it was from Dwayne Stolfitz. Put that picture on the Kundalini Fire of Christ group. And in that picture, you see this little tiny seedling, coming up from the soil. And basically the message, and I'm not quoting it, but the message says that the tiny seed had to be, covered in dirt and drowned in darkness. And it had to really work hard to come up through the soil into the light. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about right here. You had to be covered with emotional dirt. You had to come up through the depths and the darkness of emotional damage and emotional hurt in order to come into the light. And the passage from darkness into the light is aided and assisted by forgiveness. Forgive, 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 forgive. And sometimes it's yourself that is the hardest one to forgive, and you must forgive that person too. All right. I want to say hello to everybody. Everybody who's watching. Yulina and Buchabe and Ruth and Dwayne, Deandra, John, Richard, Bansu, Mayank, Tommy Larson. And I also want to say that there will be a Kundalini Awakening seminar in the country of Norway the last weekend of May 2020. And you can contact Tommy Larson for more information about that seminar and what the details are, what the costs are, and we'll go ahead, and I look forward to seeing you there. Anyway, look within yourself, look within your heart, find those areas where forgiveness could be inserted instead of revenge thinking or instead of anger thinking. You never wasted your time. Grace will not allow you to waste your time with this. The dynamic of these kinds of damages are extremely valuable once you come into the other side of them. They can be devastating, devastatingly difficult as you stay inside the dirt. But as you move up like that tiny sprout, that plant, you move up through that soil into the light, you begin to understand the other side of what occurred and how beneficial that is for you now at that moment. Thanks for watching.